Have you ever been laughed at when you asked for what you deserve? I have. It was a moment that could have broken me, but instead, it lit a fire so bright it changed my entire life. Stick around, because this story isn't just about revenge, it's about realizing your own power. It all started on a Tuesday. I remember the scratchy fabric of my office chair and the low hum of the servers in the corner. I'd been at the company for 3 years, a small but ambitious tech startup. I wasn't just an employee, I was a builder. I'd poured my heart and soul into our projects, working late nights, weekends, you name it. Our flagship product, the one that was finally getting us noticed. I was the lead developer on that. My code was its backbone. Our recent success was palpable. The office was buzzing with talk of expansion, new clients, and big bonuses for the sales team. So, I figured it was my time. I'd done my research, benchmarked my salary against the industry standard for my role and experience, and factored in my direct contribution to our recent wins. My ask was fair, maybe even a little conservative. I scheduled a meeting with our CEO, a man named Marcus. He had this larger-than-life persona, the kind of guy who loved to tell stories about his own grit and hustle. I respected him, or at least I used to. Walking into his glass-walled office felt like stepping into an arena. He was leaning back in his chair, feet on his desk, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up when I came in. I cleared my throat, and he gestured to the chair opposite him without making eye contact. The power dynamic was clear. I started my pitch. I was nervous, but I was prepared. I laid out my accomplishments, the metrics I'd improved, the all-nighters I'd pulled to meet impossible deadlines. I showed him the data, the industry comparisons, the value I brought. I spoke calmly and professionally. I ended by stating the salary I believed I deserved. And then, it happened. He finally looked up from his phone. A slow grin spread across his face, and he let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a friendly chuckle, it was a laugh of pure derision. It echoed in the sterile silence of his office. He leaned forward, taking his feet off the desk. A raise, you're a coder, a good one, I'll give you that. But you're a cog in the machine, my friend. A very replaceable cog. The salary you're at is more than fair for what you do. I was stunned. It felt like a punch to the gut. Replaceable, after everything I'd given. I tried to argue, to reiterate my points, but he waved a dismissive hand. Look, he said, his tone now patronizing. I appreciate your ambition, but let's be realistic. We're a startup. We all have to make sacrifices. Maybe in another year or two we can revisit this. For now, just keep your head down and keep coding. The meeting was over. I walked out of his office in a daze, the sound of his laughter still ringing in my ears. I sat back at my desk, but I couldn't see the screen. All I could see was his smug face. Humiliation burned hot in my chest, but underneath it, something else was stirring. Anger, pure, unadulterated anger. That night, I couldn't sleep. The word replaceable played on a loop in my head. Was I? Was all my skill, all my dedication, just a commodity to be bought at the lowest price? He didn't see me. He saw a line item on a budget. That's when the anger cooled into a cold, hard resolve. Fine. If I was just a replaceable cog to him, I'd go find a machine that valued its parts. But I wasn't going to just find another job. I was going to change the game entirely. For the next 2 weeks, I was a ghost at the office. I did my work, did it well, but the passion was gone. At home, however, I was a man possessed. I spent every waking hour coding, but not for Marcus, for myself. A few months prior, I'd had an idea for a side project. A niche software tool that automated a tedious but critical process in our industry. I'd shelved it because I was too dedicated to my job. Now, it was my lifeline. Fueled by coffee and a burning desire to prove him wrong, I built the prototype. I polished it, created a simple landing page, and started reaching out to my network, a network I'd carefully cultivated over the years, full of other developers and tech managers who felt just as undervalued as I did. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People got it. They understood the problem I was solving because they lived it every day. My little side project wasn't so little anymore. It had legs. During this time, I got a call from a recruiter. A rival company, a major player in our space, was looking for a senior technical lead. They had heard about my work, both at my current company and through the grapevine about my new project. The offer they made was staggering. It was nearly double my current salary, plus significant stock options. Ordinarily, I would have jumped at it. But holding that offer in my hand, I realized something. I didn't want to be a highly paid cog in someone else's machine anymore. I wanted to build my own. I politely declined, a move that felt both terrifying and incredibly empowering. Instead, I took my prototype and the traction I'd gained and went to see an angel investor I'd been connected with. I walked into that meeting with a confidence I'd never felt before. I wasn't asking for a raise. I was presenting an opportunity. I wasn't an employee. I was a founder. They saw the potential. They saw the market, the product, and most importantly, they saw my drive. We hammered out a deal. It wasn't a massive seed round, but it was enough. Enough to quit my job, hire a small team, and turn my prototype into a real business. The day I handed in my notice was one of the best days of my life. I didn't do it with any drama. I just sent a polite, professional email to HR and Marcus. Marcus didn't even reply personally. He just had HR process my exit. I was, after all, just a replaceable cog. Now we get to the good part. Fast forward 1 month. My new company, which we called Nexus Flow, was taking off faster than I could have imagined. Our tool was a hit. We were lean, agile, and solving a real problem. Word was spreading. One afternoon, I got an email from a venture capital firm. They wanted a meeting. They were interested in a Series A investment. This was the big leagues. I walked into their swanky downtown office, the same mix of nerves and excitement I'd felt before. I was shown to a large boardroom. Several partners were already seated around a massive oak table, and at the head of the table, smiling as if we were old friends, was Marcus. I froze for a second. The world seemed to slow down. It turned out that after leaving his CEO role, he had become a venture partner at this firm. My stomach churned. Of all the people, in all the firms, it had to be him. But then I looked at him, really looked at him. He was in his element, the master of the universe in his expensive suit. And I realized the anger was gone. The humiliation was gone. All I felt was a strange sense of calm. The tables had completely turned. I sat down, not in the chair of a subordinate asking for a scrap, but in the chair of a founder, a peer. I was the one with the asset. He was the one who wanted a piece of it. I launched into my pitch. But this time it was different. I wasn't justifying my worth. I was demonstrating it. I talked about our growth, our user base, our revenue, our vision. I was in command. I owned the room. When I finished, the other partners were visibly impressed. They started asking sharp, insightful questions. Then, it was Marcus's turn. He leaned forward with that same smug grin. "Impressive growth," he said, "for a little side project, but let's be realistic." There was that phrase again. "You're a great coder, but running a company is a different beast. What makes you think you can scale this? An acquisition seems like a more logical path for a company like yours, perhaps by a more established player." He was trying to do it again. To diminish me, to make me small, to box me into the role of a coder. I just smiled. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I appreciate your perspective, but Nexus Flow isn't just about a clever piece of code. It's about a fundamental shift in how our industry works. As for scaling, my team and I have a clear roadmap. We aren't looking for an exit. We're looking for partners who believe in our long-term vision. The question isn't whether we can scale. The question is whether your firm is the right partner to help us do it." The air in the room shifted. The other partners looked from him to me. I had not only stood up to him, I had subtly questioned his judgment in front of his new colleagues. His grin vanished. For the first time, he looked at me not as a cog, but as a genuine threat. As an equal. In that moment, I knew I had won. It wasn't about getting the investment from his firm anymore. I had other options, better options, which I ultimately took. It was about that moment of recognition. The moment the man who laughed at my request for a simple raise had to sit across the table and pitch me on why I should take his money. That experience taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Your worth is not determined by your boss, your job title, or your salary. It's determined by you, by your skills, your vision, and your courage to bet on yourself. Never let anyone's laughter, no matter how powerful they seem, silence your ambition. Use it as fuel. Let it be the sound that launches you into a future they could never have imagined for you. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And remember, the next time someone underestimates you, just smile. You might just see them on the other side of the table one day.